Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, and I am joined on, thankfully, this Victory Sunday by my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how do you feel?
I feel like I'm ready to crack some Uncle Jumbos, my man, and celebrate a dominating, I know it sounds weird, a dominating Buffalo Bills victory, the Tyler Bass game. Ready to talk about it, man.
Yeah, we'll call it the Tyler Bass / Jerry Hughes game, but agreed, fully agreed, a well-earned victory. And, everybody was down. There are plenty of things we're going to nitpick and get into. But going into this game, I said I wanted a dominant win and I wanted no injuries. We're going to explain why we think it actually was a dominant win. And we're going to be thankful that we had no more injuries. We get to move on to New England. Just, what were some of your initial thoughts in the roller coaster of emotions for today?
Yeah, frustrating start, right? Came out a little sluggish, a little slow. You hate to see that. Tough week to do that. I think we saw the Jets moving the ball early on, which that was a little bit frustrating, but then we saw that Adam Gase wasn't calling plays, so that started to make a little bit of sense. I do think the fan base frustration. I actually was on Twitter a little bit this game, which I don't do. I switched up all my routines for this game. So you guys are all welcome for me switching up my routines and getting this thing back rolling. But Slack channel was even much more nervous than it is during the game. Twitter was super nervous. And I think fans took this game a little bit harder than it actually was going, right? It stinks to go down 10-0 to the Jets. They're terrible. We all know it, but things got straightened out really fast. After that Dane Jackson interception, I really felt, and there's a lot of people out there in the media and on Twitter that don't believe in momentum. Bills grabbed the momentum and they really never looked back from that point on. And you could just feel the tide turning in that game. Still, there was a lot of mistakes made, a lot of things to clean up. We'll get into some of that. But ultimately, after that interception, man, it really felt pretty much like I didn't think that the Jets were going to drive down and score any more points from that point on. And that felt good because it felt more like a 2018, 2019 Buffalo Bills victory where the offense is kind of lagging, but the defense, they're going to play lights out and not allow a team to score. I know it's the Jets, so I'm pumping the brakes on myself on the defense, but it feels good to see this defense respond and have a lot of pressures and get some turnovers, all the things that we haven't seen this year. So happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go through the detail here, but if you told me going in that we were going to get into scoring range 9 times, that we weren't going to punt the entire game, that we were going to have 26 first downs, that the total yardage would be 422 to 190, that we would hold them under both 100 yards rushing and 100 yards passing, I would have said, fantastic, this is going to be 56-0. Now, we'll get into some of the other pieces that made that not quite as pretty, including 11 penalties for 106 yards. But overall, although this caused way more anxiety than it needed to, it made everyone feel very uneasy. The fact that we were losing to a team like the Jets at halftime is a painful thing. The fact that we didn't get in the end zone is not acceptable. But the fact that we dominated this team from start to finish isn't taken away by a less than pretty score. This was a strong win and something that they earned.
Here, real quick, I know we're going to get into it a little bit more, and you just kind of alluded to it too. No TDs against the Jets is absolute embarrassment. It's tough because there were 2 TDs. There was a TD taken back on an illegal formation that was super ticky-tacky. It was a great play. The Bills had points on the board right there. That's a touchdown. Tyler Kroft tripped over himself. Yeah. That's frustrating. It happens. Those are 2 scoring plays. This game could have easily, Greg did the math earlier here before the show, but this game could have easily been a 30+10 victory. So yes, it's frustrating that at the end of the day in the box score, those points aren't on the board, but let's not act like the Bills couldn't score on the Jets. And I think that will be a narrative this week here in the media and on Twitter that the Bills can't score against the Jets, but there was points on the board that got taken off the board.
Agree. And the math we did before the show was those 2 touchdowns, they got field goals on both of those drives. So Gabe Davis's touchdown is negated by a BS lineup penalty. Tyler Kroft falls down. Those are both 4-point plays each. That's 8 points. The 2 missed field goals is 14. Josh's fumble at the 14-yard line going in, we'll just give him a field goal on that. That's 17 points. We scored 18. If this was 35-10, everybody's throwing confetti in the front yard and saying, oh, this is fantastic. 35-10. We dominated the Jets. 422 yards to a total of 190 is a dominating win. They did dominate the Jets.
Yes.
There's lots of things we're going to explain why it wasn't good enough, and the undiscipline is one.
Richard talks about it. There's some things that they're gonna definitely not feel good in the film room, like we talk about, and penalties will be one here this week because you can't do that against Bears. You can get away with that sloppy type of play against the Jets. You can't do that against the Patriots. You can't do that against the Steelers, and et cetera.
So let's dive right in and take a look at it. We'll start with Josh. It was a little manic early on. You could tell he was trying to put the team on his back, but ultimately you're talking about 30 of 43 for 307 yards, ran 11 times for 61 yards. So an enormous proportion of the overall team's percentage of offense, 70% completion percentage, no interceptions. The fumble was a very standard NFL fumble, like, hey, you got a blindside guy coming and beating you and a strip sack in the backfield. That's something that happens. That wasn't him being reckless or crazy. So overall, I thought that Josh played well. I would have loved to have seen him, be able to take some more deep shots down the field, but I actually respect the fact that he was disciplined enough to take what the offense was giving him. 11 for 112 to Cole Beasley is a perfect example. And being able to simply move the ball down the field, put him in scoring range, and then break down the film and figure out how to get in the end zone next time.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that really were exciting to see from Josh is you nailed it. I think Dable did a good job trying to get him going early on. There was a few early easy completions that he actually got this time versus the game against Kansas City where he had those plays set up for early completions and Josh missed. And so you saw him get those early completions and you felt like, okay, he can get some type of passing rhythm going today. He slipped out of that a little bit in that second quarter and wasn't getting some easy completions and trying to make too much and throw into some double coverage. He probably had 2 or 3 balls that easily could have been picked. One in the end zone that Marcus May, I think, just dropped. He had it in his hands and dropped that interception. So that's one that Josh definitely wants back. And there's a couple others in there. But what I liked is, and this is really a whole team theme, is how he responded within the game to his own adversity of having some of those plays not go his way, and he didn't let it get out of control. Kyle Brandt talks about sugar high Josh Allen. He didn't turn into sugar high Josh Allen trying to do way too much to get his team back in this game. Because I think the anxiety that fans had, the team had too. You're down 10-0 on the road to a totally inferior opponent. How do you respond? And I think Josh Allen, even though he had some adversity in this game, responded in a way that should make fans excited because he did kind of right the ship, get the offense moving. They put a number of scoring drives together. Yes, they didn't get in the end zone, but they put scoring drives together and longer sustained scoring drives. So very happy with that. And another thing that I was really happy with was on a number of those red zone plays, him throwing the ball out of the back of the end zone. On plays that he didn't have it instead of forcing it into double coverage. Those things are growth. As much as it stinks and you lose it down, that's a growth play from Josh Allen. He didn't turn it around and run out of field goal range and take a fumble or try to throw it up in the air. Those are things that we need to see from Josh Allen. We saw him. So that's good. He's maturing week to week.
Yeah, and we'll get into some things more long term. Having field goal drives will not cut it against New England and Pittsburgh and Seattle and some of the teams that are upcoming, but it still was enough today. So that's just want to clarify that we're not saying that's acceptable or what we want, but it's also not a trash game. That they controlled this game from start to finish, and we explained why. The next phase was in the rushing game. Obviously, the biggest piece of that was Josh. The running backs were still solid, so together 15 carries for 76 yards, so still over 5 yards a carry. I thought Zach Moss flashed his best game of the year. Devin Singletary was okay. If you take away that one crazy Isaiah McKenzie reverse that got destroyed, they ended up with 137 yards rushing, but 126 was fine. I thought that the rush game was all right, and I would have liked it if they felt more comfortable that they could have salted away the lead at the end of the game. Hopefully getting back Feliciano, which I expect to be on Tuesday or Wednesday, will help bring a little bit more to there, but I thought that they did okay today, and the rushing game wasn't a problem. It still isn't great yet.
I mean, I think that's going to be similar to what we see out of their rushing game, though. I don't think you're going to have a lot of 100-yard rushing games out of either one of these running backs. You're going to see games like we saw today. It's good to see Zach Moss out there healthy, man. I want to see more of him.
Yeah. I thought the receiving game, this was a fantastic game from Cole Beasley. Again, probably the second time this year he's had just a critical game. 11 catches for 112 yards. We talk about Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. Beasley basically was the rushing game. So many of those were RPOs where Eric was pointing out in his feed. And if you guys aren't following Eric J. Turner on game day, you should be. Shame on you. pointing out the plays where they had the RPO in the sense that it was a run pass option, but the pass option were those little bubble screens to Cole Beasley. And when they read it that they only had one defender out there with two receivers, he threw the ball to Beasley and he kept getting 8-9 yards every time he did that. That was the run game in this game. And then those 11 carries by Josh, that was the way that they were manufacturing that. So they still had that ball control, take what the defense is giving you approach rather than just taking deep shots down the field. Kind of a pedestrian game from Stephon Diggs, but still solid, made plays when he needed to. And a nice game from Tyler Kroft, other than maybe getting mocked a little bit for falling down. Four catches for 64 yards and actually keeping his feet in bounds on that play was an impressive play to be able to take advantage of it. So obviously he'll get teased a little bit for falling on a sure touchdown, but overall a nice game, and getting the ball out to 8 different receivers is a heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah, and that's been the theme all year for Josh Allen, is getting the ball out to different guys, getting different guys involved in the passing game. Yeah, I mean, Diggs a little bit low, but he made some big third down conversion. He's still the guy that Josh is going to go to on a big third down. That's where he's looking, so that's good. I do think John Brown being out hurts Diggs the most. I think that they complement each other, and we will see the offense start to open back up to what we saw in the first 4 weeks, maybe not as consistently with those explosive plays when John Brown is healthy and back. I think that causes just too much stress on a defense. You're seeing teams just double and put guys over the top on Stephon Diggs, and as good as he is and can still get open, it's not smart for Josh to continue to look that way into doubles when Cole Beasley is going to take those one-on-one matchups. And it was good to see some production out of the tight end, man. We haven't seen consistent production at all from the tight end position this year. They haven't used it a lot at times because of the lack of consistency. So I'm encouraged by Tyler Kroft. And I think even when Dawson Knox comes back, I think Kroft did enough today to keep him as tight end 1 until he slips up or does something. Slips up might be the wrong word to use for Tyler Kroft today, but until he slips up in his play, not on the actual field.
Shout out to my man Paul Kane, friend from childhood here, calling out the San Francisco touchdown, taking a 7-0 lead on New England. Love to hear that.
Yeah.
Going into the offensive line, I thought they were okay. I'm still not ecstatic. There were times where Josh took some shots going in there. I don't think they gave up terrible pressure. I don't think they opened up wide open lanes. It was certainly better than the last 2 games. They're still short Feliciano. I am encouraged enough that Butker didn't destroy the game plan today, and that can happen when you have a guy like Quinn Williams as an opportunity against you. So Winters and Butker held their own, besides that one bad whiff by Darrell Williams, which honestly was probably the first really obvious negative play I remember from him this year that really stood out. Obviously causing a strip sack fumble is as bad as it gets for a tackle. I thought there were some negative plays, but overall they were all right, and I guess took a step in the right direction. So I'll call this game average, but average is better than what we've been getting.
Yeah, I have no pretty open complaints. Really interested to see how they looked in comparison the last couple of weeks here. I really hope. So the clock's ticking, right, on Feliciano. This is the week that he has to come back. Is that correct?
Yes, by Wednesday, by my count.
Wednesday
is the deadline. If he's not activated by 4:00 Wednesday, I believe he has to be put on season-ending IR, which I will be absolutely flabbergasted if that's what happens. So I don't know if he's ready to play because they obviously haven't activated him yet. So they could activate him and do a have healthy him not scratch. Be game day active, healthy scratch per se. But I will be shocked if they don't put him on the 53-man roster by Wednesday.
Yeah, so I'm expecting that they just looked at this matchup with a number of guys and said, look, we're going to keep you out a week. I think John Brown's in that camp. I think Feliciano was in that camp this week of, hey, we're just going to give it one more week. And I'm excited to get him back because even though they got through this game, Quinn Williams is tough, and that's a tough matchup. There wasn't a whole lot else in that front 7 that is going to cause too much stress on an offensive line. So coming up here, moving forward, there's a lot of guys that they're going to be playing. And I don't like this current 5 that they have. I need Feliciano inserted into that lineup. And then I don't know what you do at the other guard spot, but we'll have to see on the tape what Butker did and see how Winters held up here this week.
Yeah, before we flip over to the defense, I just want to give a quick shout out. Really appreciate everybody. We were really excited to see how many people gave us ratings and reviews on iTunes and on Google Play and all the various places that we see it on Stitcher. We had more on Spreaker as well. So appreciate everybody out there. Our winner of the T-shirt University gift card is G Funk Jimmy, who has just a fantastic
That is a good name.
screen name, is outstanding. So G Funk, the one downside is now you have to reach out to us and let us know. So find either Aaron and I are on Twitter. And in the future, we're going to ask, maybe give us a Twitter handle when you leave the review so we can contact you more easily and complete the giveaway. But thank you. Thank you to T-Shirt University for giving us the gift card. We'll get that over to you, G-Funk, and appreciate the kind words. So switching over to the defensive side of the ball, this is interesting because I will say, emotionally, I felt frustrated by that, letting them move the ball early. And if you look at the stats from that first quarter on, I think it's very easy to see why so many fans were frustrated with the game, because it seemed bad. But honest to God, they had 124 of their 191 yards in the first quarter. So from the second, third, and fourth quarter, you're talking about 67 total yards that the Bills gave up. That is a dominant performance. It ended up, and probably the best game by the defensive line we've seen all season. 6 sacks, 10 quarterback hits, 6 passes defensed, which 3 of those were by defensive linemen getting their hands up. 3 tackles for a loss. Just a strong performance here that admittedly felt uneasy early on, but just kept tightening down over and over again. So ended up seeing probably our most aggressive blitzing call in the second half. I love the fact that they were sending extra pressure when they could tell that Darnold was struggling with it. So some second half adjustments, and I thought the defensive line finally showed up, even if it was a little later than I was hoping.
Yeah, and right here, Adam D talks about scripted plays. It's sometimes an Achilles heel, and it has been a McDermott defense and starting out slow. Also goes into that the team probably got really excited that Adam Gase wasn't calling the plays anymore, and
Huggins was a functional offensive mind.
Yeah, he got them going with some scripted stuff, and that's probably stuff he was really excited to get out there this week and call his own plays. So some of that's kind of probably baked into the early success. I do think that some of it is also the Bills struggled with some gap responsibility and stuff. And I think McDermott and Frazier probably laid into these guys. And this is the type of moment, in my opinion, in the season that's really pivotal. You're on the road against the inferior opponent. We just talked about at the top of the show here. You're down, you get punched in the mouth a little bit. How do you respond? This is a moment of how does your team respond? Do you just let them kind of walk away and steal a win on you, or do you come out and you put down the clamps? And the Bills, while it's still the Jets, I get it, but they came out and they did put down the clamps on this team. They did not move the ball after those first few drives. It's from the halfway through the second quarter on. The Jets had no answer for this Bills defense, and they really did whatever they wanted. And even guys that have struggled at times stepped up and made big plays. My guy Taron Johnson made a big 3rd and 11 stop, huge play on that. A couple nice tackles. Guy Trent Murphy, my boy, came in with a sack. You saw Mario Addison had a really nice game along the line. Jerry Hughes probably had his best game so far this year.
Maybe in a couple years, to be completely honest.
He was wreaking havoc.
Yeah, Jerry ended up with 6 tackles, 2 sacks, a tackle for a loss, a forced fumble, an interception, a pass defense, and 2 more quarterback hits. That's as good as the game gets. That's the kind of game that's going to blow up the PFF rankings or however they score things. He was ridiculously impactful today, and in a game they really needed. So being able to do that is just unbelievable. Eric was talking about how excited he is to watch Ed Oliver's film because he was blowing it up there. He didn't have the box score impact that Jerry had and some of the other guys, but he was in there wreaking havoc, causing disruption the whole time. So it's going to be, really exciting to be able to see where that nets out. I actually thought that there was a couple positive plays from Zimmer, but the same idea. They were making some disruptive plays. Vernon Butler, guys were pushing the pocket, but you were getting the pressure off the ends and off the blitzes. So if that's how they need to put that together, it is what it is.
Yeah, I that's kind of been Oliver's year. Like, he definitely has had some down games, and I've kind of defended him, and people say, well, he's not making the splash plays, but he's been disruptive without it necessarily resulting in. Yeah, he's seeing a lot of double teams. He's taking them on for a guy his size. When you turn on the film, it's not all terrible. There's some moments where he does get pushed out on those double teams and a huge run hole comes up, but that's not his game. He's not the guy that's going to take on those double teams in the run game. That just isn't who he is. But he has been disruptive, and it doesn't show up in the box score, but that doesn't mean he's not doing a good job. So here, I think Cody, I can't find the comment, talked about AJ Epinesa he flashed a couple
I
of
noticed
times.
him several times.
Yeah. So that's good. That's a guy that I'll probably go back and look at here this week, because that's definitely, I think the fan base was frustrated they didn't make an immediate impact in those first 4 games, but seems to be trending in the right direction here midway through the season. And that's really, Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott keep talking about it. You don't want to play your best ball in September, October. You really want to be hitting that stride going into November. So if some of these guys can build, we talked about this, right? Get right game. The defense can take some of the confidence from this game and how they played and get right and move forward. This is the first game where we really saw all 3 levels of the defense and the whole unit play together for sustained amounts of drives, an entire second half and half of the second quarter. So we saw most of the game, this defense playing together as a unit, sustained, stopping a team. Again, yeah, it's the Jets, but that's the type of game you build confidence to go do this against New England and go do this against other teams.
Yeah, and getting into the back 7 here, I really like the rotation. They protected Milano by not putting him in there for a ton of big thumping rundowns. They brought him in for all the 3rd and longs, and he was in there. So I like the fact that they eased him back in. He got out of this game without additional injuries. AJ Klein did okay in the rundowns. Obviously, Frank Gore got more yards than I would have liked, but he looked okay. Wasn't as bad. And I think Sal said it earlier on pre-show that being able to see Tremaine Edmonds next to Matt Milano just makes a huge difference. It does. It just makes a big difference in being able to show that. So the comments have been blowing up with it here, so we can't wait any longer. Dane Jackson looked nice. I'm excited to go back and see the film on Dane Jackson. So obviously 7th round pick. He's been inactive all season. The injuries forced him in there today. And I'm honestly excited. I thought that he flashed positively 3 or 4 times, and I don't recall any negative plays. Came up and made some really nice tackles in the run game, 2 pass defenses, and knocked away a couple really strong ones. So it was nice to see Taron Johnson have a little bit of a bounce back game here, and now another option for us to rotate in with Dane Jackson. I'm excited to see what he can do in the future.
Yeah, again, I am excited. I do want to watch the all 22 on him, because I think if you listen to Bruce Exclusive's podcast about Taron a couple weeks ago now, talking about the plays where receptions are made on a guy and looking at just those, you miss a lot. So what I want to see is the plays that weren't receptions on guys. What was he doing on those plays? I do think the play that people were frustrated with Taron on that 3rd and 19 was just as much on Dane Jackson as it was on Taron, and also actually a phenomenal throw. I don't know that either one of them could have made a play on that throw, but if you're going to have a scapegoat on that play, I think they can both take it equally. So I'm sure there's some of those, but you expect that from a rookie, right? That's okay for a rookie to make those mistakes. But he's also, I agree with you, a guy that I'm excited to take a look at all of his reps here from this last week and see what he's got, because as Cam Lewis gets healthy, if you got this guy too, I do think Levi Wallace is going to come back here in the next few weeks, I'm hoping. And I know people are frustrated with Josh Norman, but if they can get a full roster of their cornerbacks and rotate some of these guys in and try to hide some of their weaknesses, I think that's going to make the entire unit better. And I think, again, guys developing here into November, hitting their stride is only going to be a good thing for the secondary.
Absolutely. And I know that, we saw some nice plays. Jordan Poyer had a couple nice blitzes. I thought Trey had maybe 1 negative play that I had marked, but overall was back to his normal self. I thought that he did a solid job. Yeah, correct. Yeah, he came off the edge on one of those combined sacks. It might have even given him a half sack. But overall, I thought it was good. I know we're going to talk a little bit later. There's a lot of comments about the Jordan Poyer or the Micah Hyde penalty. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. I think it's worth discussing here. But overall, I thought that the defense really stepped forward with a performance we needed to see. It wasn't perfect early, but when you clamp down like that for the second half and the second quarter on, that's all you could ask for. They kept them to 10 points or below. And I think if anybody said they were going to get 10 points or lower going into this game, we all would have taken it.
Yeah. And one thing that I also think is going to be a bit of a narrative here this week is Tremaine Edmonds. I think people will see some of the stuff from the broadcast and think that his struggles continued this week, but I actually think that he responded nicely to some of his struggles. Yeah, do you want him to get those interceptions? For sure. He's not an offensive player. Like, there's a reason he's a middle linebacker and not a tight end with his physical freak size. So he's not going to catch every one of them. Some of them were tough plays. He might have missed a couple spots. He had a bad angle once or twice, but overall he had a really good game. I think people are maybe going to overly nitpick him on some of those bad plays and not look at a lot of the positive stuff that he put on film today. And again, I think good reason to be excited about some of his play moving forward. And Eric touched on it, man, when Milano's in the game, or even it just is a different guy. And Milano sets the tone. And I think if Milano continues, comes back and takes it more snaps, I know people were unsure if his availability hurt his stock or showed that he's super valuable to this team by not being in there in the defensive struggles. I think it's probably more his value is that when they don't have him, it's a lot worse without him.
Yeah. Switching over to the special teams side of the ball, we saw some outstanding returns, 2 great returns. One, of course, negated by penalty by Andre Roberts, but he opened up the second half with that 58-yarder, which was fantastic. Being able to be in there consistently positive. We give up no positive returns for them. They kept that controlled and under wraps the entire time. There was no punt returns because Corey Bojorquez has never punted. So again, when we talk about that when we say words like dominant, I know it's hard to see that in an 18-0 score. I think some guy, Blue Lemons here talking about still bummed that it was only 18 points. I think it's okay to be bummed with that, but I think what we're trying to do is bring a little context to the fact that it was frustrating that we didn't convert more of those, but it was still a controlling win today. And the fact that they never punted is a great example of what we're talking about here. And then you get over to Tyler Bass. I think it's a little bit of a weird game. Some of the misses were frustrating because the misses were actually the easier kick. So the one was 45. It was a really ugly kick. He missed it way wide left. I don't even think it touched the net when he kicked it. But then several of the other ones, you're talking about 53, 48, 47, 51. Unbelievable kicks, had another miss again. So 6 of 8. And if you told me he was going to be 6 of 8 and showed me the distances, I would have said, okay, that makes sense. Because I would have assumed the 53 and the 51 and the 48 and the 47 were some of the misses. So the fact that he hit all the tougher kicks and missed 2 that probably should have been makeable isn't perfect, but the kid went 6 of 8 and were our only points on the board today. 6 of 8 from field goal range is a good game. It's not great. It's not perfect. It's good. I thought it was actually probably redeeming for him to make those kicks, know that he got 6 of them in the bag. And I think that's a better indicator going forward, even though I'd love to see better than 75%.
Yes, you want to see better than the 75%. Again, I'm going to find the silver lining in this a little bit. And one thing that's really important to me, especially in a young kicker, is in that moment, how does he respond after that first miss? Because he's had a little bit of inconsistency issues. There've been some holding issues. He probably knows the fan base is on edge. I'm sure the coaches are not letting him off the hook here either. So when he misses that, I'm sure the first reaction in his stomach is, this is disgusting. I don't want this to be a thing. Pat McAfee's talked about it a number of times. Kicking is mostly mental. You have to sit there for whatever it is, 20, 30 minutes sometimes before you get another shot at the one job that you have to do where everything's on you. He came out and did it again a few times. Unfortunately, he had to go back out there so many times that you're bound to miss at some point, but I like how he's responded to the misses, and that's a good thing. Now we just have to clean up of not having so many misses. But this is a little bit who he was in college. Like, he had a really good senior year and put up good, or junior year and put up really great numbers. Yeah. But he had inconsistencies in college as well. So it's developing him, getting over those humps. But I will say, people out there clamoring to get Stephen Hauschka back, he's definitely not also the answer to any of the kicking woes that the Bills have. At 53 yards, you're not even in range to try a field goal with Stephen Hauschka. So at least he's got the leg where you're really always in range as long as you're on that other side of the field. It's just kind of bringing it in and getting him to be more accurate going forward. But happy to see the way he responded mentally, because that's a big part of it, man.
Yeah. Just a quick question. So Scott's asking about the Gabe Davis touchdown formation call. It didn't look great. The only thing we could think of is either there was something on the opposite side. Darrell Williams and Reggie Gilliam did line up a little bit off. They didn't say who it was on. We're assuming it was Gabe Davis, and I still think it is. Gabe Davis was the far receiver. You have to have someone covering the tackle on each side. So either the tight end or the receiver covering the tackle on the line of scrimmage. You often see the receiver look and check with the referee to say, hey, am I on the line?
Yeah,
I don't know if he didn't. Yeah, he didn't do that. He was maybe a half a yard off the ball. It certainly looked ticky-tack, and a play that wide receivers line up like that. Wide receivers line up like that every single play in the NFL, all the time. So if it was on him, it was a really ticky-tack, unnecessary call. Technically, I guess he wasn't like foot on the line all the way up at the line of scrimmage, but he certainly appeared to be doing it. Eric was saying that maybe it was Diggs and Gilliam on the other side, that both of them were on the line of scrimmage, or maybe both of them were off. I don't know. Gilliam and Williams looked pretty deep on the right side, but maybe Diggs wasn't covering there, or both of them were, but we'll be able to see better as we go.
Yeah.
Switching over to some of our sponsor segments here is a little bit odd. We don't have a lot where we're, picking out a drive of the game that is not a scoring drive, but we don't have a touchdown in the game. So I actually went with the 14-play, 73-yard drive that we just talked about, where Gabe Davis would have scored the touchdown, and in my mind did. I think that was unnecessary to call back. So I think that would have been in a really big spot in the game where it could have set them up to have much larger of a lead and a much more controlled spacing of where they were. It would have been the time to put them up 16-10 and really taking control and put it away where there was no anxiety in that second half. So I thought they did all the right things. They drove down 14 plays, 73 yards, 7 minutes off the clock, just a really, punch in the face kind of drive. And it should have been a touchdown in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought that's a good drive to pick because, I'm going to have a tough time with any official explanation of that one because I watch a lot of football, man, and I see that all the time not get called almost every play, like you said. So,
almost never.
Yeah, I'm going to chalk that up as the touchdown that didn't happen, the phantom touchdown, and give them the drive of the game and use it all week long as my argument for why this was such a dominating victory.
Yeah, go make sure you go check out our friends over at West-Her. If you're looking for a vehicle here in Western New York, 23 dealerships in New York, the largest dealership group in New York State. So make sure you're checking them out. Find a good vehicle. They'll take care of you. Going into this, I think it's going to be an interesting discussion for the two of us to be able to kind of talk through. Let's start with the NFL's responsible handling of the Micah Hyde penalty. And I think that we're both on slightly different sides of this. I tweeted immediately afterwards that that's absolutely not a dirty play. I don't think that Micah Hyde could have done anything much differently. I mean, he could have tried to go a little bit lower, but he turned his shoulder, made contact with his shoulder to the shoulder. I don't think there was a lot of direct to the helmet contact, but I also understand that that's the kind of play, kind of bang, bang, vicious play that they're trying to legislate out of the league. So I get that it was a penalty, and I don't agree with the people who said that it was a BS penalty and that it shouldn't have been a flag. I get why it was a flag.
It was absolutely a flag. I do believe it was a penalty to the T of the rule book. I think his shoulder went right into the helmet of the receiver.
The head and neck area, I believe, is the verbiage they use.
Yeah. I also think it was the right play to make by Micah Hyde. I think it's up there with the responsible play of the game for me because if he gives up that catch, say he doesn't do what the NFL wants him to, if he comes out or he holds up on that play and gives up a 30-yard reception. Yeah. We talk about toxic differential all the time. That gives the Jets a toxic differential play with almost 2 minutes, 1:45 left on the clock. Puts them into Bills territory. I don't like that. I'd rather take the 15.
It would have given the ball about to the midfield.
Yeah, take the 15-yard penalty. Yes, I don't want anyone to get hurt. I want to preface that I don't want players to get hurt. I hope he's okay. You'd hate to see that anyone get hurt, and I get why the NFL is trying to get rid of those plays. We know Micah Hyde's not a dirty player. We have enough tape on who he is. He's not a dirty player. I think safeties are taught to do that their whole life, to go and separate a guy from the ball. I don't know. Everyone's saying, yeah, he could have gone lower. I don't know that he could have. That's a bang-bang play, man. He's moving full speed to go over and cover that field to get to that ball. It's a fantastic play for him to even get over there and make contact. it stinks that it ends up like that. I get why the NFL has it as a penalty. Nobody wants to see head injuries. Nobody wants to see concussions. The egregious side of that is what happened to Andy Dalton today in the Cowboys game, where a quarterback is sliding and somebody targets the head on the way down. That's a dirty play. What happened with Micah Hyde is the NFL wants to get rid of it. You never are going to be able to get rid of those plays because they are so bang, bang. But I do think it has to be in the conversation for responsible play of the game, because I do think that, the Jets convert that, and that's a whole different game-ending drive possibility. And I think everyone in Western New York is on the edge of their seats, only up by 8, and they put the ball in midfield with some time left.
Absolutely. The other side of this that we had identified as our responsible play of the game, I'm going to call out the time management at the end of the first half. Some people were frustrated with how they did it, but the Bills got the ball with 40 seconds left. When they had 40 seconds left, they started at the Jets 20 or their own 27. So they needed to get like 40 yards to even make it a 50-yard field goal. That's not easy to do in 40 seconds. So in 40 seconds, they ran 6 plays. You're not going to do any better than that. There was some nitpicking that maybe they should have called a timeout after the Devin Singletary catch, but then they don't have the timeout later for what you thought was one of the most important plays of that drive.
Because they only had 2 going into it.
Yes,
correct?
They only had
used
2.
One early.
Yep, they used one on the pass to Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs for 9 when they were about at midfield, and then they had 1 left with the 18 seconds at that point.
So what do you gain? 2-3 second advantage to calling a timeout, and they called the last timeout with 2 seconds left?
I think there would have been they could have gained 9 seconds in exchange for the one timeout. It would have been about 9 seconds that ran down if they had taken it when Singletary got tackled versus the timeout, but then you don't have the other timeout there. So maybe you have
to play to the edge.
Yeah, you have 15 seconds left with no timeouts, and Beasley, you can't go up the middle. Yeah, you have to play the boundary.
Yeah, so I'd rather be able to play the whole field in that position, and it does work out. That was a great play call by Brian Dable. That's 2 weeks in a row now at the end of the half, getting Beasley open in space. Obviously, the Chiefs gave them free.
Yeah,
whatever.
That was freebie.
But this wasn't free, and they still got him open and got literally right to the line of range on the screen there for Beasley. So great heads-up play. And nice thing about that play, too, again, for the people that hate momentum and hate talking about unquantifiable things, Dane Jackson interception turns into 3 points to end the half as the Bills get the ball back at half. Huge momentum swing. And what is that, a possible 10-point swing in that moment? I mean, that is the kind of stuff that you're losing to an inferior opponent changes the entire outcome of the game. So good on them for taking that and running. Doug Marrone would have kneeled that out after getting the interception and not even gone for the points with 40 seconds.
You're right.
Dead serious. Rex Ryan would have kneeled that out.
Dick Duran. So many of our coaches would have knelt on
Sean
the ball.
McDermott,
there.
Year 1.
Yes.
Might kneel that out. So this is a sign, too, that the analytics say, hey, let's get into this offense and try to get the yardage and get into field goal range here. So good on them. It worked. And I do think that moment, that series of plays, I tweeted it out right after it happened. That series of plays was game-changing and took the momentum going into half. And then they continued to respond from after that. So good on the Bills. And good. I think that was fine clock management. I'm not going to nitpick that.
Yeah, and I actually love the fact that they pulled off the double dip, that we watched the Patriots do that for so many years, where, you get the ball, score right before halftime, you're getting the ball at halftime, score again. I would have liked if it was a field goal and a touchdown, it was a 10-point double dip. But the fact that they got the ball and scored, and then got the ball after halftime and scored again, it's something just showing that's an aggressive way. I also wanted to call out the fact that I really think that they kicked the third quarter thing here today, and not, it only counts so much when it's the Jets. I get it. I'm not trying to say that this was some miraculous thing and that we were, that it should count extra for that. But the way that they handled this, they legitimately made adjustments. They found ways, all of those Cole Beasley little bubble screens, those were additions in the second half. All of the changes to start taking what they were giving him, we started running the ball more in the third quarter, and we made much more aggressive defensive play calls in the second half, sending way more blitzes than we normally have this year, and it caused pressure, and it was really getting into Darnold's head. So I love the fact that we saw second half adjustments. We shut them out. We scored every time we had the ball. It was that kind of second half adjustment. Again, I want touchdowns. We have to convert against the better teams. It's not saying that's okay, but this was the best third quarter we've had all year, and the first time we started a third quarter with a score and a stop all year.
Yeah. And if there's a team that you can afford to not score touchdowns on, it's the New York Jets. So if you're going to have a week, and I've already had mentions in my Twitter feed here before we came on of people worried about the red zone and the not scoring. Getting into the red zone is half the battle for the Bills, I think. Maybe I'm going to be wrong here moving forward, but I don't think it's a problem. It seems more of an anomaly of this game than it is a trend for the Bills to not be able to score in the red zone. We saw them actually score and it get called back. There was a touchdown for Tyler Kroft in the waiting. He slipped and fell. So it's not like they totally were shut out of the end zone or any attempts to do it. But even if they were, I don't think it's going to be a trend moving forward. We've seen them do really well in the red zone. I think that's going to continue here moving forward. I don't think they're going to get shut out every single week when they're into the red zone. And again, half the problem that this offense had for the last couple of years is even getting there, even getting in scoring position and being able to get points on the board. So this is the game to take that lump in. I don't know that it's a thing moving forward. I have no evidence to support that at all.
Yeah. Randy, thank you very much. And I do want to just say thank you again. We're really appreciative of all the reviews and ratings everyone gave us here. It really does mean a lot. If you're listening to this and you're enjoying it, wherever you're listening, if it's on YouTube, if it's on Facebook, wherever it is, give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. It seems cheesy for those things, but it really does matter for us. That's how more people hear about what we're doing. That's how they can find us, and more people can do that. It really means a lot. Just another reminder, thank you to G-Funk Jimmy, who is our winner of the gift card for this week. Please make sure you reach out to us and let us know your contact info so we can get this sent over to you. And then as we do future contests, we'll ask for you guys to put something in there so we can get a hold of you as we go.
Here's a good one too. Everyone's saying how the Bills can't do that against the Patriots next week. No, actually they can get away with doing that. We've seen it happen.
The Patriots literally just lost to a game of 6 field goals by 18 points. It's a great
Not that we want to do it again that way, but I do think playing the way they did on defense is really more important to stopping the Patriots and keeping Cam Newton in check than it is necessarily outscoring them by a huge margin here. So
yeah. Appreciate our guy Sonny here, listening from Alaska. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So as we're getting things wrapped up here, what are some of your takeaways of what this meant? We talked a lot going into it about what is a get right game. We talked about the fact that, as far as I know, I think we got out of this healthy. I didn't see anything dramatic or serious.
Micah Hyde, maybe. I don't know if we got any.
I believe I'm going to assume, pure assumption, speculation. I'm going to assume that was the independent neurological person saying, "Hey, that was head to head. You have to come off as well." And I kind of think they lean that way, almost as a pseudo suspension kind of thing. When there's a flag that, hey, you had head to head too, you got to come out and get checked out. I kind of feel like they lean that way when I've seen those.
Yeah, I didn't see anyone else get hurt, so that's good. As far as the get right, obviously there's a lot to work on, a lot of plays they want back. So a lot of stuff to learn from, as Sean McDermott will say on film. And I'm sure Josh Allen's talking about it right now in his post game, that there's plays he wants back and things he needs to do better. So there's still a lot of that. They didn't fully get right necessarily. It was nice to see Matt Milano back. I think that's a get right that we wanted to check off and see him get back in the action and be able to play. Trey White being back, also get right. I think the defense, the way they responded in the second half, I think that's probably the biggest get right for me. Again, it's the Jets, but they still responded to the opponent that was beating them. Yeah, you don't get judged on who you beat or how you win those games. They came out and dominated an entire half of football in the NFL, and that's really all that matters. They were making plays, they were getting to the ball, they were getting sacks, getting turnovers, taking advantage of the opponent. Hopefully it's something that they can build off of. Hopefully some of these young guys that flashed in this game, this is stuff that they can build a nice foundation of their own progress and continue to build off that too. A guy like Jerry Hughes, hopefully this is something that just keeps him going, get a big game to get him going. So I feel good about the defense. The biggest thing for me all day long, you and I sat here for a year ago and I kept saying 2020, halfway through the season, week 8. Yeah, this is a good point. To become a premium subscriber. Halfway through the season when I was going to judge the Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, Josh Allen regime. Obviously, Sean McDermott gets his extension a little bit ahead of time. I'm sure a lot of people were feeling antsy about that after dropping the 2 losses, but I wanted to see how this team was going to respond to the adversity of those 2 losses playing on the road. They had more adversity in this game early on. Yeah. Going into halftime, the response to adversity that we saw on the road in the NFL is real to me. I don't care who the opponent is. It's real. And this team came out, you said it, and put to bed some of that third quarter woes that they've had and got the job done. And that tells me that everybody's on the same page still in this building. I don't think that there's any bigger underlying issues other than they lost to some good teams. They're a team that still has flaws and has some injuries on the roster and has some holes that they still need to fill. But I don't think there's any bigger conspiracy or thing wrong with the team. I think they're all on the same page, moving in the same direction, have good leadership that's going to lead them through moments of adversity. So that was a big get right thing for me, that I still have the faith in this coaching staff and in this team to get it done when they need to.
So these last two messages here really speak to where my head is at. So Adam saying we're 1 week closer to a healthy Brown, Ford, Milano, Feliciano, Levi, Norman, and Lone Wolf saying it's good our D played well because the offense couldn't get the ball in the end zone. My biggest takeaway is everybody step back for a second. We are 5-2 right now with a 2-game lead on the Patriots, which could go further, and we haven't played a complete game yet. They have not played a complete game with good offense and good defense at the same time yet, and we're 5-2. That's great in the grand scheme of things. There's an opportunity. We played really shorthanded in a bunch of critical areas. We're having guys get back to health here. I'm going to say we're lucky in the sense that we've had bad injury luck, but all of them are short term. We haven't actually had a great deal of long term ACL, Achilles, season long.
You better knock on all that wood behind you right now.
Yes, all the rich mahogany. So we have been fortunate in the fact that we have an opportunity to get those guys back and are 5-2. And we haven't played great defense, and we're 5-2. We played a pretty crappy game on offense today and couldn't get the ball in the end zone, and we're 5-2. Those things matter at the end of the year because you don't get style points like in college. We don't have anybody vote on whether we get in there. So the fact that we haven't played our best game yet, and we've got 5 games in that W column that they can't take away no matter what, that matters. So do we need to play better against the Patriots and Seahawks and Steelers and some of the tough games on the schedule? Absolutely.
I'm not sure about the Patriots, but yeah, the other ones.
But it's still, everybody take a breath. When we said get right, we wanted the team to play better. They did. There's still a lot of film they got to work on and get things back in the right direction in multiple other areas. But this was a positive today. We got to win. We got healthy. We move on to New England, and now we can hopefully go kick their butts.
It's super frustrating to hear coach speak. I get why people hate it and they just like slam their head against tables, but Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott aren't wrong when they continue to say you don't want to be playing your best football now. You want to play it November, December, and finishing the season. We've seen a number of times. I'll have to go back and pull the Giants when they won the Super Bowl, the Packers when they won the Super Bowl.
That Flacco Ravens run.
The Kansas City Chiefs last year didn't start out great.
Lost 4-6.
You don't want to play your best football now. You want to get better as the year goes on and continue to improve. Stacking up wins while you're not playing well is a great point, bud. If they can turn some things around and play better as the schedule gets a little bit harder and make a run towards the end of the year, you want to be hot heading into the playoffs. You want to be on a 4 or 5 game winning streak heading into the playoffs because those teams continue to take that momentum that they've built and go on runs. We've seen it a number of times. And I totally agree with the coaches when they say that. I know it's frustrating because it sounds like an excuse like, oh, well, we don't want to play our best football now, but it's true. You want to win some games, but continue to improve throughout the marathon of a season. And come November, December, really hit your stride and take that stride into the playoffs to make a run.
Absolutely. And we're going to be excited here. You guys will hear we have some good guests coming up here to preview the Patriots game. I agree. All the guys in the chat now saying, I think it's very fair to say this is a big game. That is a measuring stick game. This is against Belichick. This is against a healthy Cam Newton. This is a game that really matters. We have them in our house. Even if you're planning on just splitting with the Patriots this year, you have to take this game. So we'll get into that a lot more as the week goes.
They're still the champs of our division until we prove that wrong, until we take that from them. And that monkey is still on the Bills and Sean McDermott's back until they do it, until they beat them, and that's off the back. So this is a huge game for this coaching staff, for the narratives that are going to get built up around this team if they can't beat the Patriots.
Absolutely. So big thanks to our sponsors here today, Uncle Jumbo's, West Her. Appreciated the Dave over at T-Shirt University with the giveaway. We appreciate you guys very, very much. Again, if you're listening here, thank you. We appreciate all of your time. The chat is awesome tonight. You guys are fantastic going back and forth. Really give us a ton of content for the show. You can find me at Greg Tompsett, GregTompsett, mainly arguing with people and going back and forth. But Aaron, where can the good people find you?
Well, first, I want to tell you, with the way the Bills are playing, go find Uncle Jumbo's and get yourself. It's delicious.
You need it.
It's 8% alcohol. I drink one during the game and one after the game, depending on how the game goes, and I feel a lot better about the Bills. So go take care of that. You can find me at Aaron Quinn 716, arguing with our friend Bruce Exclusive about all of our food takes. We're total opposites.
You're literally polar opposite humans.
Yes, on every single food take. So that's where you can find me most of the week.
All right, so awesome, guys. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for checking us out. Thank you to Uncle Jumbo's. Thank you to West Her. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.